Okay, so at this point, in terms of setting up your PC, we're going to be taking a look at the last stage of it, which is essentially cable management. This not only covers the routing and the organization of your cables, but actually making all standard types of connections, whether it's for data purposes, whether it's for power purposes, or whether it's for functionality purposes, like enabling your fans and things along those lines. So with that noted, we are going to be referencing that we are going to possibly be using some of the cable ties that came included with your equipment, like let's say some of your power supply cables are sometimes wrapped in some of these items. You don't want to throw them away. They're always useful. So we're going to keep a couple of these on hand, as well as usually some of the cables within the chassis themselves are wrapped up with these guys. If you have any extra ones on hand as well, of course you can always utilize those. So from there, let's go ahead and actually jump over to the chassis and start to figure out how we're going to lay things out. And we'll start off first with our power supply. First and foremost, we're going to be taking a look at the PSU and considering the actual modular connections that we have, which you can see actually are here present on the power supply. Now, in this chassis, we do have numerous actually cable rating options that you can actually see with these actual cutouts right here. So this is great because it allows us to go ahead and easily run them through to the back of the chassis, easily then deal with them then there in the back, tie them up, adjust them, and route them to the key locations that we need. Overall, helping it to minimize any type of obstructions internally here, as well as helping to improve airflow. So with that, one note that I want to make before we actually start connecting anything is that keep in mind that when you're making these actual connections, you generally want to work from the inside, moving the way out, all the way out to the left, okay? And also accordingly to that, also taking a look here at the bottom would be preferred instead of connecting to the top and then potentially sometimes blocking your view from the bottom. So with that, let's go ahead and start off with our first connection, which since we're starting off here on the bottom is going to be our graphics card. So this is going to be PCI Express power for the graphics card. The majority of cards on the market utilize a 6-pin PCI Express, and then for 8-pin, this power supply just goes ahead and you lip that over to there, and now you have an 8-pin. Our graphics card is only utilizing a single 6-pin, so we're not going to need to worry about this cable. When we route it through, we're just going to go ahead and tie it up there in the back. So let's go ahead and get this connected. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and route both of them back because I don't want to go ahead and have the cable just directly run up right here. I do want to run it through the actual back and then bring it through one of these cables so I can go ahead and cleanly route it that way. Next up is the two connections right above there, which are going to be generally for peripheral power. The peripherals in our setup is going to be one for the optical drive and then another one for the actual SSD. And that's going to be these connections, which are your serial ATA SATA power connections, okay? So we're going to go ahead and connect two of them, predominantly because even though we have more than enough SATA cables, SATA connections on one single cable, for the overall cleanliness and for the cable routing, I want to go ahead and have just one header attached to one device. Okay, so we got one in there. Let's go ahead and route it through. And then we got one more. Same thing, just going to go ahead and route it through. Keep these cables nicely together. Okay. Next up is going to be our CPU power. So that's generally indicated by an 8-pin, sometimes split because some motherboards only require 4-pin power for the CPU, but most modern generation platforms, including ours, is going to be 8-pin. Okay, and then lastly, we have our motherboard power, which is going to be the 24-pin power connection. And same thing, even though the connector is right here, we're going to go ahead and still make the connection here, route it through, and then pull it through here on these type of cutouts. Okay, and now we're just going to route this last one right through here. Okay, with that, we're now going to go ahead and start to route them through to the actual points, and we'll come back to you once we actually have them essentially in their corresponding locations. And once we've gone ahead and finished up connectivity in this area, we're still then going to go ahead and focus in on fan connectivity as well as the internal cable connections for the chassis to corresponding headers such as maybe the power, USB, and front USB. Okay guys, we've gone ahead and routed things through the back. As you can see, we've got a couple of extra cables here outside of just the PSU connections. These are some of the chassis connections. So let's go ahead and give you a little bit of a breakdown in terms of how we ran things. So we took the majority of the cables, ran them through this hole right here, and then we routed them through this route hole and then through this route hole. So here we've got our actual PCI Express for our graphics card, and we actually have two of our front intake fans. So there's 220mm fans here. And we're going to route that here to chassis fan header 1 and chassis fan header 2. So this is going to go through very cleanly, okay? And we're going to also take one of those cable ties, tie these tightly together here, and then push back, and we'll essentially make those connections, okay? Now here we've got the 24-pin motherboard power connection. It's going to be very straightforward. We'll go ahead and just connect this one right now. Okay, and we've got that now connected there very cleanly. Now we've gone ahead and run the power connections for the SSD and for the optical drive as well. For the SSD you won't see it because it's directly behind this area, and for the optical drive we have one header just right here which is going to go ahead and go up, and we'll make the connection right here to the optical drive. Okay. Now on this end you can see that here we have the CPU power connection, and that's going to go ahead and go here, and we'll plug it into that one. Now here we have our back 120mm fan, and we have a chassis fan header right there. And we're going to take a little bit of quick time and we'll do this off camera, and we'll come back and we'll show you what we're going to do. But we're going to essentially tie this guy up, and then we're going to hide it back here in this little area, and then just make that quick connection right there. Now lastly, over here in the bottom area, we've got our front USB 3 cable, which will plug into this motherboard, which has two front USB 3 front headers. Okay. So for cleanliness, we're going to go down here, and overall performance, this is going to be very, very fast in terms of the front header because it will support our USB 3 boost technology. But we do have another USB port over here which also supports our USB 3 boost technology. Both are going to give you faster performance, but they are powered by different controllers. This one's by the Intel controller and this one by the ASUS Media controller. If you want to find out more about that, check out our USB 3 performance video, and we'll go in a little bit more about some of the differences between those guys. And here we've got our HD audio connection. This is going to be for the audio connections and the front side of the chassis, okay? And that will make a connection right over here in terms of this pin header. We've gone ahead and completed pretty much all the internal connections. We'll come back and show you what that looks like completed on the other side. But here we are actually on the back side, and you can see we've got a lot more cables here. But fear not, really, we don't need to worry about this section too much, because the only area that's really going to kind of be visible is this for the most part, and you won't really see too much there. This whole area, where essentially our focus is just to kind of consolidate it down, get it tight in terms of using, you know, our cable ties, getting it scrunched together, because once we put the actual chassis on, it does have extended room here to essentially allow these cables to exist essentially out of sight and out of mind, so we're pretty good there. Now we have gone ahead and run the data leads, which we're reinforcing here by the red cables that we're utilizing, but of course the motherboard box includes with black cables, which look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. That being noted, here we're just going to show you essentially the connection that you would need. This is coming right now from the data connection on the motherboard, so the SATA port, and we're going to go ahead and connect it to the SATA port here on the SSD. Okay, we've made that connection, and then we have that one additional SATA Molex power connection, so we're going to go ahead and connect that as well. Okay, so we've made that connection. At that point, from here, we're just going to go ahead and tighten all these cables up, get them scrunched in, tied in, and we're going to be good to go. One thing I will tell you as a little bit of a tip: if you look over in this area, you've got a little bit of room that you can go ahead and wiggle some of these some of these cables in here, keep them snug in there, and then from there, once you go ahead and actually put on that side of the chassis panel, it's going to fit a little bit more snugly. We've gone ahead and tightened it up a little bit, of course, definitely with a little bit more time, a little bit more care, a little bit more attention to detail. We can even make this look a little bit nicer, but overall, as I said, we're just looking to get things more or less cleaned up in a fairly straight line, because once we put this on, it's going to be out of sight and out of mind. So let's go ahead and put on this actual side of the actual chassis in terms of the panel, and we'll be good to go. So there are some lips right here that you just want to make sure to slide in and angle in there. So we have that. Just going to go ahead and tighten it up here from the bottom, and then take our thumb screws, start to screw it in. Sure to hold it in there from the bottom, and check to make sure that you're fit and snug, and you are good to go. Okay guys, at this point we've essentially completed just about everything. We've gone ahead and installed all the hardware, we've got everything mounted, connected, cable routed, managed, and we're pretty much set to go at this point to start going through the actual first post, so the power on self-test of actually turning the system on, and then from there getting to actually using your system by installing the operating system and going about that entire process. Now if you noted, I haven't gone ahead and put on the chassis panel because it's kind of like a general no-no in the do-it-yourself practice. So usually you only want to put the panel on once you know everything is working without any problems. So we have actually gone ahead and already connected the power cable to the power supply, and we're going to go ahead and cut it on. And once we go ahead and cut it on, you can see that right here we do have a little power LED that's letting us know that the motherboard is receiving power, and we're good to go. And we also have gone ahead and enabled our TPU switch, which is also letting us know that by the little the little green LED that's right there. Now at this point, all we would need to do is go ahead and hit the power on button. So let's go ahead and do that on front of our chassis. And you can see that our system is now powering on. So at this point, you know, you would want to go ahead and already have connected your monitor, your keyboard, your mouse, any of your other peripherals, and from there, go ahead and get started in terms of the operating system installation process. So overall, this gives you an overview and a tutorial on how to first set up your PC.